to crack this for effect. There we go. Where's the buttons?
This is the Okayest Hunter podcast. Never pass on shooter bucks. That's just meat in the freezer. It's your tag. You hunt how you want. This is Okayest Hunter.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Okayest Hunter podcast.
Howdy, feels good to be back in the studio with you, bud. It's been a while.
The last human that was here was Jace in that seat.
Yes, real good. I can still feel his presence.
Oh, I bet you can.
Left me some presents.
It smells. I'm not sure. I'm kidding.
Love you, Jace.
We do love Jace. He's a wonderful human. It is the season for Oktoberfest. So that's what we're sipping on here for the moment.
I have a lovely coworker. Not only is she an amazing coworker, but she happens to work at a brewery. Local brewery here, and she happens to bring me a couple flats of beer that go into the room that they can't sell because they're like an ounce under.
Really?
Yeah, so I've been sipping on some Oktoberfest for the last 2 weeks, thanks to my wonderful coworker.
That's good for you, man.
It's good to have good friends.
I'm probably a little jealous of that. Although it's like one of those things where everything just keeps coming out earlier and earlier and earlier. So, but I got it now, and it's going to be October in about half a month, so or less now.
Clock's ticking.
Yeah, it's ticking fast. Archery season is upon us. It opened up on the 14th here in Wisconsin. You got out. Greg got out. Matt got out. I did not get out. I need the solo canoe to get to where I'm going. And I was like, you're better suited for it than me. I didn't have the buy-in from my wife. And I was like, it's just not even worth it. It's too hot.
I rolled out in the morning, and then I dropped it back off at your house. You guys were gone.
Yeah.
I dropped it off. You find everything?
Yeah. But it was funny because I was like, I got to put the oars out. I even told Holly, I got to put the oars out. And then I passed out in my kid's bed, putting him to sleep. And I woke up, I'm like, oh no. And I was like, well, he took the boat, but what did he do? And I was like, I hope he had the garage code still. And then you're like, hey, I don't know if you're okay with this. I used the garage code. I was like, thank God.
Well, you had a garden shovel leaning up against the house next to the canoe. And I was like, that could work.
Challenge accepted. It probably could have worked. It's been loud.
I was like, this would have been a great video if I had someone there to videotape. I was like, how do I videotape myself canoeing across a lake with a shovel?
Done weirder things where your skis have broken and all sorts of.
Always a good story.
Something weird happens. Well, anyway, we're brought to you by Nosler. I know you're going to be putting some rounds through your rifle here with this weekend.
This weekend, yeah. Greg and I are going, and it's a month, less than a month.
It's less than a month. You're right. Yeah.
October 15th, we fly out.
Flying southwest to Portland, and Lyndon's going to pick you guys up.
Yep. Crashing at his place there for a few hours, and then early morning, drive down to Brookings.
Sweet.
Go hunt some blacktail.
Well, if the timing of it all works out, you might actually be able to tour the Nosler facility also.
When we're up there. Yeah,
which could be really cool.
It'd be amazing.
If that works out, great. If it doesn't, it's fine. But mostly just excited for you guys to have an adventure out there. Sounds like it's going to be a good time.
Thank you.
Yeah, pretty neat. So shout out to Nosler. They're going to be behind that content. Which string am I going for here? And then Latitude's been crushing it. Every time I see a product launch, but the same day, 2 hours later, it's sold out. So it's not even worth me pushing them right now because
I got to go to the night before opener. It was almost like a little deer camp thing, which is a big thing for gun season. But Gary Grunow, one of the guys I had on Dropping Pins, really good, renowned hunter, he has a bunch of people over, and he's got a couple guys staying with him for a few weeks. And Josh Tulker from Before the Echo.
Oh, yeah.
He was up there, and it was really cool meeting those guys. And he's also with Latitude, and he had all the new Ranger pack and the new platforms.
Heck yeah.
So I was like, whose is this? And he's like, that's mine. I was like, dang, dude, that stuff looks awesome.
They don't give us that stuff.
The Okayest shipping method.
Yeah.
It's coming sometime.
Well, that's cool. So, yeah, good stuff from those guys. If you got your hands on it, great. Spartan Forge, again, I always just say stay frosty. Be sure if you're using the app and you already have it, be sure you're going to your app store and looking for updates, because it's going to work better if it's up to date on the newest phone version, yada, yada. But there's also so many features being released that you might be missing something good and valuable right now. So I don't know. And it's also available on the web. on your computer. So like down here in this basement, we'll put up on the TV a lot and strategize together.
And they have that eagle eye that's on the desktop,
which is wild.
And do yourself a favor. Garrett Prawl has an awesome video of how he sets up. You can do presets on your maps.
Kind of like
I literally copied what Garrett Prawl does with his presets, the UAV with these contour lines, the LiDAR. And it's like,
you just redo everything.
I just flip through them. And like, it's wonderful. So do what Garrett Prawl does. He's amazing.
That's smart.
That video was very helpful.
He's a good dude. And then Rackup has been doing these things called drops. Well, I mean, a lot of companies do product drops, but the naming for them is interesting because it's like, drop time. And so they're just stay tuned with them because like they're happening so fast that we're only getting word of them like the day before. He's like, we're keeping everyone on their toes. All our ambassadors, our influencers, our partners, everyone's just kind of like at the edge of their seat, what's going to drop next. So they're dropping a lot of cool stuff on a regular basis. It's a pain in the ass from a business standpoint to do it like that.
It's gotta be a nightmare
because you're just constantly turning stuff. But it's exciting for the community to see what they're putting out, and their quality of content is just beautiful. For a product that's just some metal, what it can imbue and showcase is really
all the stuff thing on their site looks.
It's perfect. Anyway, we do have a guest this evening. We are talking to Ryan. Oh shoot, Ryan! I didn't ask how to pronounce your last name. I might have just did it when I said shoot. Is it Shoots? Darn it! It's like a 50-50. What am I going to go with? Well, Ryan, can you what title do you carry over there? Because I'm just calling you a product guy in my mind, but that's probably not prestigious enough for what you're doing at Bear.
Manager over compound bows and youth bows. So pretty much anything that has to do with the bow category, I'm involved in somehow.
And how long have you been at Bear?
6 years. And I actually worked at Cabela's for 19 years before that. So I've been in the industry a while.
Geez, you're not kidding. Well, thanks for joining us tonight. And, I know you guys have been a partner of Bear kind of in the background for, I think this is year 3, because the first 2 years were like very testing, give product for Foam Fest. Then there's some transition in personnel. So then we kind of did that process again. And then this last year, towards the end of the year, we kind of worked in the deal with the podcast. We got this fun sign here. We got bows hanging up, and you guys have outfitted our crew with some excellent bows that we're really proud to be using. Derek here, if you look behind him, he's drawn this amazing red bear print. So like it's clearly a fit, and we're happy.
It looks like it.
Yeah. You guys get a little advertising every time we podcast because it's just we believe in that vision in that way, and you guys are a great partner. And thanks for before you guys were ever officially a sponsor and had the sign, those bows that we gave away at Foam Fest the last 2-3 years really were amazing because the people I just think of like Joel like when he won that bow and that lady the first year, like they were we set them up immediately and they like were ecstatic, and you guys weren't even like official partners yet, and you were willing to help people out. So I just want to say thanks to Bear Archery for that, because that was really cool.
Very special for those guys.
No, we appreciate it. We like to get people involved in archery, and I'll be honest, when I saw your studio here on this end, I was like, man, it's like we got to decorate it. I love it.
Yeah, well, it's we call it the room in the basement, the cat pee basement. So
you make it sound so beautiful.
I have to make it less romantic because we are very authentic, and I just want to know, this isn't all glitz and glam. If you had to come in here, it's like you got to walk through my house.
Mostly smells like cat urine and Axe Dark Temptation.
There you go.
That's kind of funny. Someone said our audio is cutting out. I don't know. Sounds better now. They said, okay, good to go. Appreciate that, Buck Slayer. That was in the comments.
Yeah, in the comments tonight, having Ryan here, who's obviously an industry professional with compound bows and project manager, like anyone who's listening, if you have questions about Bear or just archery in general, great time to like shoot those into the comments. Or
yeah, I think and I'll let you kind of take the stage here a little bit, Ryan, but just to paint the picture for listeners right now, if you're listening live, which I see some people are starting to funnel in a little bit, this is the People's Choice show. This is our listener show. This is the live call-in feature exists, so we don't have a one-way dialogue. It's a two-way street. So I know calling in can feel intimidating, or maybe you don't want to interrupt, but we have a call queue. So if you call in, you're going to get screened, and I'll choose to bring you in or to not bring you in. We've had pranksters before. I'm not saying that it happens, but they're pretty funny. But certainly, feel free to call in. We'd love to hear from you. And if you have questions about, anything archery related, but specifically bear archery related, let us know. And we have questions that we kind of fielded on our Instagram, so we'll get to some of those. But if you can kind of just talk about, I think Derek said it earlier, the resurgence of Bear as a brand, and kind of like the trajectory of where you guys were and kind of how you are now in the market, and obviously even working with like, we're not very prestigious when you contrast us against the hunting public. I think we'd love to belly up at a bar with those guys. We'd probably do just fine. But I mean, you guys do some pretty cool stuff too. So I'll let you take the stage here and just kind of share some of that journey with us.
Yeah. Well, first, you guys would get along great with the hunting public guys. There's no question in my mind. Um, they're great, just pretty everyday kind of hunter guys. So they like to tell the stories too. But so to kind of circle back about Bear, so we won't bore everybody with a lot of it, but Bear's over 90 years old now. So the company, so it's a big deal. That's something we like to talk about a lot, as you guys probably a lot of people know. It started in Michigan, and then Fred moved it to Florida in the late 70s, and we're still in Gainesville, Florida today. So long tradition there, and of course, I can tell you some of the machines that we still have in Florida are original machines that Fred made. I mean, there's times where you're touching it or working in the traditional side, and you're just like, oh my God, I could be standing right where Fred stand at one point. I mean, still had like an office there. It's pretty cool if you're really big into our brand and stuff like that. But also kind of tells you that heritage is very important to us and something that um, continue with. Now, of course, those machines have been, modernized and adjusted and things like that to keep going for so long. And that's more on the traditional side. But everybody likes to think of him just traditional, but he was so just a huge part on the compound side. So, of course, he preferred traditional, is what people would tell you. But I mean, he for so long we'd hear like, the whitetail was my first bow, or the whitetail 2 was my first bow, or my first bow was a bear bow, which is great, and we love that. We want all your bows to be um Bear bows. So that's really what we strive for now. And you can see it in our line. We kind of make sure we kind of go forward every year with thinking, okay, what would Fred do? And Fred was really big and kind of like the blue collar, make sure things are affordable, right? So we tried to push technology forward too, but we also are thinking, can we do it affordably? So we try to make sure that we have price points so anybody can get into our line at really any level, whether you're an expert or you're new, or it's a hobby you do every couple of years. And then also um, we we're always thinking too, like, what features can we give you, make it fit the best. He was really big into you know archery. We want it to fit the individual, right? So that's why you see so much adjustment in a lot of our bows. We do that on purpose. We really want it to kind of almost feel like a great pair of shoes, right? Our bow should fit you like a glove, and we work pretty hard to make sure that that happens. And then as resurgence of archery goes, I mean, COVID was horrible, don't get me wrong, but there was a lot of new archers that got involved. It's a great thing you can do at home. And there was a little bit of a resurgence there, but we still see it going strong, and especially with states that, have great archery seasons.
Yeah, well, Wisconsin's definitely one of them.
Yes.
Absolutely. And I've talked to more and more people in the last 3 years that shoot archery as just a recreational hobby, which is not something I ever really like. Maybe I just didn't notice it when I was younger, but I do feel like with that COVID time, like people were just looking for a reason to get outside and do something. And I've talked to them, but like I do enjoy shooting my bow, and I'm like, that's cool. Like that would never have crossed my mind because I like the hunting side so much.
We're like, we're not the same, but that's cool.
But yeah, keep going. Like, but there's been a number of people who said they just enjoy doing it recreationally.
Yeah, there has
something
been
you can do it for
a
kids.
lot.
Yeah.
I've even set up some bows just for some friends and acquaintances, and just that, be like, well, what are we gonna hunt with this? And they're like, we're not. I was like, okay, well, we won't worry so much about the paper tuning of broadheads and stuff like that as much as just getting you going, right? And then another little resurgence that we saw that was great for our company was during COVID. We had a good amount of compound people become interested in traditional. And so people would ask, like, what's a good crossover, or what do you think about things like that, which they're completely different, but there also has similarities, right? So I think it was just kind of people had more time, so they kind of got back to the roots of it. And I like to shoot both. So everybody has their own kind of way they like to do it, and our brand offers both. So
that's a whole topic in and of itself.
Well, yeah,
yeah,
and the Bear brand offers like traditional bows that are also at a really affordable price, because you start looking into the traditional side of things, and there's so many cool, and I mean they're awesome, but like custom bow builders and bowyers who make these bows, and they're absolutely stunning. But that comes with a price because it is an artistry. So like if you're looking to get into it and try it, Bear has so many bows that are like, for a couple $100, you can really be set up very, very nicely to get into traditional archery, which is how I kind of got into it, was buying like I had a Fred Bear Grizzly, and that was like the sweetest thing ever. I loved it.
There's a number of questions that came in through Instagram, and I'll try to pepper them in where it makes sense. Some make sense. Some people just that know us that like want to have something asked. But this one can fit, and this I don't think this would be an embargoed topic, but someone had asked, is there anything new on the horizon for traditional bows? And I don't know if that's anything that if there is, or if there is, if it can be talked about
That's
or not.
A great question.
Like, yeah,
that's a hard one.
Yeah, there is. I can tease a couple things like that. So we're getting close to when we launch our new product line at Bear, and a lot of like our customers or fans, kind of follow us and know that we tend to launch in the next coming months. So people are starting to anticipate it. So not really spoiling anything there, but there's a couple things. So what we tend to do on the traditional side is every now and then we make some tweaks. There's a pretty good sized tweak coming that I think is very exciting. And then there's some, sometimes we just adjust some wood and some finishes. Kind of like where you said that you started with the Grizzly. Well, we still make the Grizzly. Now, of course, we change it at times. Like, we might use a maple or a bobine or different wood depending on the bows and stuff like that. So kind of give it a fresh or a different look every now and then. So we have a couple of those coming as well, too.
Very cool.
Well, one of the podcasts, we have a network of podcasts. So for anybody new listening, and maybe yourself included, it's not just the Okayest Hunter podcast. There's 12 shows on the network. There's 2 more on deck, believe it or not.
Holy cow, you've been busy,
I'm
Eric.
gonna have some heart palpitations soon, but one of the newer ones that hit the lineup is the Bowyer podcast, hosted by Matt Morris, and he's out in North Carolina. So not terribly far, but one of the questions were like, when are they going to have me come tour their facility? So I'm like, yeah. I mean, maybe he's a pretty cool dude, and he makes some really neat stuff. So certainly a podcast worth listening to, but definitely on the trad side of things, not on the compound side.
Well, and Matt put his trad bow to work just not long ago, right? That was a trad bow hunt for Bear.
He got a bear,
up in Canada.
Yeah,
very cool. Congrats, Matt, if you're listening. Sounds like you might be.
We have to get him on the show to tell us that story.
Yes,
the way.
We do.
Yeah, we're just getting stacked up here with guests, but anyway, so certainly one that some folks might be interested in if you want to go deeper down that rabbit hole. So I'll interject another question, which was, what's the best kids bow from learning to shoot to then graduating into the woods and hunting? And I'll add that I bought the ambidextrous one from Bear. I can't think of the name of it, so forgive me.
We do a spark and a flash.
Yes,
that are both ambidextrous. Yep.
I think it was a spark. That sounds familiar. And my kids, what a great way to get them involved, because it's pretty safe to shoot. They're shooting the target block right there with Dad. It's really great. And so hopefully it's just kind of like building some of that muscle memory and getting them familiar and comfortable. But I mean, at least once a week, they just want to go shoot it. So it's the one activity I can't be like, not right now. I'm like, go do it right now.
So, that's the right now activity. Yeah. If the kid asks, we're going.
All right, yeah. Okay, I'll grab out the stuff. Let's go.
We did that last night too.
Go ahead.
So all those youth bows are really good, especially if the kiddos are younger. I feel like, like you said, the flash or the spark. We also have some other popular ones like the Brave and the Apprentice. And what's great about them is like there's no intimidation. And I would say those, like, you can start very, very young. And it at least gets the muscle memories and gets them over kind of the fear of putting a string or something close to their face. Believe it or not, working with youth, that's kind of it's easy for us. We've done it for so long, but a lot of them want to hold it away from them, and that's something that you can break pretty easily with those. But I did want to point out, so in the Bear compound bow line, we have a bow that's called the Royale, and I won't lie, we kind of came out with that when Fortnite was crazy popular in the battle royales, so
Oh, yeah.
might have been part of that a little bit. So, so we love the name, but it's one of those bows that can grow with very little kiddos. So the draw weight can go down to 5 pounds and up to 50,
Wow.
and the draw length can go 12 to 27. So, I mean, it can fit. I mean, I'm a 26-inch draw length, so I'm not a big guy. And at 26, I can put this bow at 27 and shoot 50 pounds, and it looks like it's, it's pretty small in my hands, but it's screaming, right? But not a bow I'd normally shoot with, but it's also very small. So it's 27 inches axle to axle, so extremely light and movable for small kiddos. So I like to tell people if like this is, if they're maybe like that 8, 9, 10 range, and it's something that you want to start shooting with just backyard, but then turn up into that 35, 40 plus pounds and actually hunt with, you can all in one bow.
That's pretty cool.
That's the perfect transition, right?
Yeah.
From that
Yeah.
lower poundage up into, okay, now you're ready. Let's give it a couple. Dad, sneak in a couple cranks every time we shoot. You just, half turn that Allen key and, slowly build them up to hunting weight. And
it
there you
looks,
go. Now the bow
I
that
mean, and it is a real compound. I mean, it's a cast riser. It looks just like Dad's compound. You can get it in camo. We do it in some colors. We do it in some colors with some different camos mixed in to kind of make it fun, but it doesn't look like a toy at all, and it's not. It looks like Dad or Mom's bow on purpose.
That's a big deal. Well, we did get a question in the comments that I'll flash up on the screen here, but Calder had asked, he said, my brother wants to get his first bow this year. He's 33 and physically fit. So I don't know if he's just complimenting his brother, but he's asking for any recommendations. So yeah, if he's never gotten a bow ever before, like I know the ones that we gave away at Foam Fest were the legits, the RTHs, and those seem like a great bow. I also know that the Adapt with a single cam is just a really easy draw cycle. So I don't, if you have other recommendations, please. Obviously, I'm not the one to be recommending bows, but that's my thought.
So I always like it when, obviously, I think if somebody's going to get into archery, go to your local pro shop or Bass Pro or Shields or whatever, retailer you have close to you that's able to fit you and allow you to shoot bows. I'm always a big component in that. And no matter when you're going to get into it, or even if you're just in the, in the market for a new bow and want to try a few out, I mean, we definitely would recommend that you try it out and see what fits and feels best to you, because what I would recommend, the two that you just named are hard to beat, and there's pros and cons to both for a new archer. So on a new archer, I'm always big into get something that has some adjustment, meaning that it's got a floated mod, which almost all the bears are going to have that. So what I mean by that is if you go in and let's just say there's a couple ways to measure your draw length out there online, and all of them get you really close. Still, the best ways to go to a pro shop and get somebody that knows what they're doing to look at you and see, if you're a 28 or a 29. And sometimes as you start to shoot, that may tweak a little bit depending on if your form is good right off the bat or not. But so like we'll just say the Adapt 2, which is a bow we launched at the beginning of this month. So it's adjustable from 24 inches to 31 inches, and you don't even need a bow press. You could do it right at home. So you could have it, leave the shop at, let's just make it up, 28-inch draw. You start shooting and it feels like maybe it should be 28 and a half or maybe 27 and a half. You can adjust the bow down. And the other great thing is on our bows, that one particular, depending on the set of limbs you buy a 45 to 60 or a 55 to 70 pound limb. So I'll just go with it that he's physically fit. I'm going to take that as strong. So, and as you guys, us archers kind of know when these are back you don't use a lot. So even though I don't want to humble anybody, but you get them big, strong guys, and then they try to pull something back, and they're just like, you're not usually working these muscles out in the gym very much.
That is a great way to humble somebody is, look at big bad bodybuilder, pull this bow back, and then they can't. I mean, that happens time and time again.
Yeah,
it's different.
Pull my bow back.
It's so different.
He's fit. I think he's slightly bigger than me, I only know this because we're at the beach with our kids together. I was like, shit, man, you've been working out. Pull my bow back, and he tried twice. He couldn't. It was at Foam Fest, actually. And so then he had who came over with their bow? I can't remember who it was now. Someone else came over with their bow, and it was like, oh, I got this one. No problem. It was Ritter who came over with his bow, and Ritter's like, I'm not nearly that strong. Very low. And so then he went to like really give her, and it was like, whoop, it pulled it right back. You know, it was totally different.
I mean, it's a bit of a mechanical process. We're not trying to deviate from rider's knowledge, but I mean, it's just a different thing until you get used to it.
Comfortability is what I try to preach. Yeah, comfortability. What I mean, to the tune of what is comfortable for you.
And like, Ryan, we're gonna let you finish. Yes. But on that same note, and on the same note of comfortability, like when you're first starting, so Calder's brother?
Yeah.
But like Calder's, like the first 100 shots you take, you're just figuring out what the heck you're doing. You may realize that something else is far more comfortable or far more, you do a little research. So that idea of adjusting something without needing a bow press and having to go to your bow shop is probably really more important for guys who are getting into it than say someone who like knows this is my, like I got everything is dialed, my anchor point, my draw, like, but having that adjustability in a new person, like that's going to be huge because you may change the way you're shooting the bow over the course of the year as you get used to it and you learn how to do all that stuff.
And to that end though, Ryan, like how easy is it to make some of these adjustments? Like what's your confidence level? Does Bear have good instructions, YouTube tutorials, so forth around like, okay, you want to tweak this? Here's what you need to adjust on the bow. If this is what you're feeling on your shot, on your draw cycle, or your let off or whatever, here's what do you have resources for the layperson like Calder's brother who's never done this before?
We do. I think we do. And then we also have each bow is a little bit different. So kind of the head back to that adapt too. So we do 15-pound adjustments on almost all of our bows for the most part. But like the legit that you guys were talking about, that you guys gave away, I mean it's got huge amount. I mean it goes
like 10 to 70 or something.
Yes, it does. It goes like 10. It goes 10 to 70 pounds. So huge amount of adjustment in it, right? So, which is also something, good to talk about too, if you needed that much more. But what I was going to get at is you could always start at 55 because what we tend to see happen is like, just take this physically fit. Once he starts pulling a bow that he can handle back, next thing you know, I've got guys that can't even budge a 70-pound bow and they shoot a week, maybe 2 weeks at a bow at 55 to 60 pounds. And they're pulling back the 70-pound bow as easy as a guy that's been shooting 10 arrows a day for 10 years, right? I mean, so it's got no problem at all. It's just getting those muscles in shape. And then some of it is also when you're very brand new and have never pulled a bow back, there are some easier techniques and ways to do it, right? And I would argue some more designed for hunting and some more designed for target. That would help you just be smoother in your shot. So I think the Adapt 2 is really good for that to look at, but I did want to hit the legit is hard to beat, period, because its draw length goes from 14. It's one of those bows that literally I could get a 15-year-old boy shooting and a 40-year-old man. And I mean, and you go to some 3D events and stuff and see those bows on the line right next to other bows and they shoot just fine. So, and all these are different price points as well too. So where it gets you in. But I did want to say too, where you were talking about, as you're starting to shoot as a new archer, it's not just the bow you're getting used to, it's everything you're getting used to. It's the release, right? Like a lot of times I get asked, T handles are very popular now and have been for the last few years. And it used to be all wrist strap before that, especially hunting. I mean, we are definitely a hunting company. That's what we move forward with first, pretty much always, right? So, but either way is great. And some guys go back and forth. I'm able to go back and forth. So as you're getting used to a bow, or you have a bow that has that adjustment, and it allows you some of that freedom to get used to some different release aids and stuff that may affect the draw.
It's a lot of good intel.
I try not to get too detailed. Sorry. When you're a bow geek, you're a bow geek. It's hard to get away from.
My brain got hung up on. Am I old because I use a release?
Like the wrist?
Is that done now? The wrist strap? Like,
I still use it.
But like,
no, you're not old.
I'm like, wait. I don't want to change.
I'm the guy who has the wrist wrap release that I like so much, the Fletcher Hunter little bitty one, and that they don't make it anymore.
Great.
The Fletch Hunter.
Oh no, Yeah,
and I was like, oh my god. My buddy told me that they're no longer making those. I was like, I have to find them online and buy like 5 of them just in case. But I guess somebody makes one very similar.
The life cycle of the release. I've had mine since forever.
It's the only... as long as you take care of them. I'll be honest, I have a couple of those Fletchers in a bucket just in front of me a little bit. Not a bucket, like a bin. I'm like a release snob. I don't even know how many I have anymore.
In the bucket, right?
No, that's not even my category, but yes.
Don't touch my bucket. Those ones are mine.
I got $100.
I love them for a while, and then I switch to something else new and different. It's just, I don't know. Releases are just fun to try.
T-handle, is that synonymous with thumb? I know we're getting off topic a little bit. Is that the same thing where you're just pulling and eventually it lets go? Like, I'm not ready for that.
Well, there's 2 different kinds. There's a back tension release, which is the key point, but then there's also a thumb release, which looks very similar, like the T-handle, but you're actually using a thumb trigger, like a finger trigger, but the trigger finger is just more associated with that flinch than a thumb.
You're probably right about that.
Yeah. So we have the Trophy Ridge line, and we do make releases under it. And we have one called the Precise that you can adjust that. It has a shear trigger in it. So it's not, you guys were talking about, there's back tensions that are completely all done on back tension, or all done on the tension that you put on the release. And that's definitely more target. Not that you can't hunt with them. Some people do, but that's definitely what I would call more advanced versus just one with the shear trigger. And it's gotten more popular. I think there was kind of, people thought that was more of just for the target world. But it's not. It's, you can train yourself and get ready to hunt with one just as easy as I would say, just as well as you could with a wrist. And either way, sometimes you don't even have to adjust the bow, but that's one of those things that when you have a floated mod like we do on our bows, you can. And then the last thing I wanted to hit on that, just because I think you guys were started that way, is so like on the Adapt 2 that the hunting public endorses, like that's a single cam, so it is meant to be so smooth. And sometimes for archers just starting off, maybe that's really important, meaning there's less valley there or less peak there. It's just how the cam systems work versus some of our dual cams that run off different percentages at times. So and a lot of that's just, it's just based on feel, right? So like I prefer some, like a 3-track cam, like something we'd have on our Persist bow. But the Adapt 2s, they draw so smooth, and I can tell you the hunting public, they want a bow that's so smooth and easy to draw that they can draw if they're sitting flat on their butt or standing straight up or in a tree saddle. They want it to be easy in there no matter what, and that bow fits, and a single cam fits that bill perfectly.
And that's funny you just mentioned that. Well, I mean, maybe it was just beautifully timed because they just, they've been releasing videos for their deer tour, and I just watched one the other day because I'm like one of the guys waiting for that. And I see that too. And Jake was, hunting, sitting in a cornfield. I think he was either on his knees or sitting, and you see him, and he literally, that deer is kind of looking, and he just pulls it straight back. And I know, like, I've got a double cam that's pretty aggressive bow, and that's much harder to do with my bow than it is. Jake made it look so
really good shot of adrenaline.
You know what I mean? Like, and that's a huge benefit depending on your style of hunting and the situation. But that's a big benefit.
Yeah, my kids were watching on Sunday, and I was getting the glare from the wife. I was like, "Come on, I never get to watch hunting stuff, virtually ever." And the kids are in for it. I can do this for a little bit. I'll get up and do some chores. It's gonna be fine. But let me have this moment.
So my son was sick today. He wasn't feeling well, so he stayed home from school. So I stayed home with him. And in the morning, he wanted to watch some hunting shows, and he has gotten into goat hunting. So he's like, "Dad, I want to watch a huge goat hunting." Like, I was like, "What kind of goat are you talking about?" He's like, "The big curly horn." So we looked at Marco Polo sheep. Hunting Marco Polo sheep in like Tajikistan or wherever. And then, but I mean, it's like an ultra rich dude with like, he's shooting at like 850 yards. And I was like, "You have a very expensive taste in hunting, my son. Let's look up squirrel hunting with a bow."
That's fantastic. One of the, another question, Buckslayer on YouTube commented and asked, "How do you tune a single cam bow?" And I don't know how loaded of a question that is or how technical we want to get, but I think given the talk of the Adapt from the hunting public guys, like maybe that's a good question here in line with that.
Yeah, I would say that's one of the reasons that the hunting public guys love it so much is so the solo cams, so you can definitely tune them and they tend to stay in tune fairly well. But that's one of the reasons those guys like them. Back to what we were just saying, they hunt so hard and so aggressive, in a good way. So then you dual cams or there's all kinds of different, I'm just saying dual cams, but there's more aggressive dual cams. You could get more in depth than how you would tune something that's a two track or a hybrid style or something like that versus a solo cam is just the cam at the bottom. Most of the tuning you really need to do in a solo cam, unless like something would happen with your strings or some where the lengths came off or something like that where it was really out of time. Most of it you would just do with paper tuning and things like that when you're setting up your rest. So they're pretty easy to tune and tend to stay in tune pretty well.
That's good to hear. My buddy Joel, who won the legit 2 years ago, or one of the legits 2 years ago at Foam Fest, he had to take he took his in archery shop because he's like me. It's like I don't know what I'm
It's
doing.
okay to need a
I don't
little
know what I'm
help.
doing.
It's okay.
But it was his rest wasn't at the right height.
Okay.
And so like it was doing something it probably shouldn't have. It was a little bit wonky, and they got that adjusted for him. It sounds like it's all pretty good now, which is good to hear.
As soon as you add two cams, you get more power because there's twice, the amount of force being, pulled out through their peaks, and Ryan's gonna, go through and correct me on all my things, but you have to worry about like the timing of the cams, which I feel like with their cable systems and the different ways the bows do that now, they've gotten better. But
Yeah.
you also have two power sources to now make sure they're firing exactly the same. Otherwise, you're getting inconsistencies. If one comes through a little faster than the other, then you're getting inconsistencies in your arrow flight. Whereas if you have one, like the one he was just talking about, once you got your rest set up, that should stay pretty much good to go.
I like
Yeah,
that.
and these are just in general type things. So as a bow gets older and things like that, I mean, depending on the use of it. But yeah, you're right. The other, the big benefit of some of those other cam systems are, yes, they have more power, so you get more speed, right? I mean, so the Adapt is still the Adapt 2 that we just launched earlier this month. Still, it's a 320 IBO, but when you're comparing it to like a Persist that we offer at our top of the line, with our EKO cam system, it's going 340. So I mean, there's trade-offs for different things, and then you can also adjust your let off and have a higher let off with some of those dual cams.
I'm shooting the newer flagship, and I have the Legend XR hanging in here for backup because Lord knows I'm bound to mess something up. And if I'm quoting Greg Tubbs, who isn't in studio with us tonight, I might drop tune my bow once or twice. So
yeah.
It's good to have something else at the ready just in case. But what you said, IBO, for the new folks, because I know they're in here. I know there's some folks that are like they're very curious about archery and trying to get into it. Can you define what that means?
So it's really how all of us measure speed, at least to list it. So it's called the Archery Trade Association. It has like standards that they set forward, and then like all of us different companies, like Bear Archery, and then all the other bow companies out there, we all kind of adhered by that standard. So it's it's basically it's a certain grain arrow at a certain draw length, and then we all measure our bows that way. So at least then you have a starting point. So that's where you'll see like, okay, we might say a bow is 340. Well, 340, but then you know that's 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 really going as fast as it can probably go, right? And not going to be what your true hunting setup is. So I'm not going to get IBO speeds because I'm not shooting 30-inch draw length. So once you get shorter, you tend to lose some of that. But then, of course, maybe I shoot a lighter arrow to get some of that back. Or big trends right now, especially hunting. Again, like big thing at Bear is we don't really do much target. We are definitely into um, the compound hunting side of the world, right? So we build and design these for hunting. So a lot of guys are like, I'll just keep coming back to the hunting public, but they like to use heavier arrows and are very loud and bold about how heavy those arrows are, right? And there's some positives to that with the kinetic energy and things like that, and it works for them. Um, but those things slow your bow down, and then of course the positive of that is you get it might be going slower, but if it's still accurate, accuracy is what's going to make you successful as a hunter over speed. Speed helps you make up for a little inaccuracy. So I need a little of both.
It's a good explanation because yeah, people will ride. I don't want to say trends, but certain things will flare up in the conversational tone of the archery world and the bow hunting world, and then we flock to it. And I was one, you were one, I think Greg was one. We played around with FOC, and then the Chevy slogan starts playing in your head when you fling your arrow like a rock because it just starts straight up dropping. And if you're not used to that, like, holy shit, what just happened?
I think Greg went the hardest because he was shooting it was like around 700 grains, and I think he put it into the neck of the doe and it exited the hind quarter.
It did.
So I mean,
it had a full body pass.
It did
through.
its job.
Yeah.
But I think we've all slowly taken a little bit of that back.
I think I'm shooting like 505 grains now, or something real close to like the high 400s, low 500s. And I think that's a good spot to be, but that's me. And apparently I can kill deer. So like if something's working, and I'll keep doing what's working. Like no need to mess with things. If it's not broke, don't fix it. Yeah, but I'm not busting through. I mean, I get the whole plan B, C kind of thing where now I'm going through the shoulder. But yeah, the hunting public's very great to watch. And what works for you is probably the thing that you need to hear the most as a bow hunter. If it works for you, then do that. If you have success with mechanical broadheads, then shoot mechanical broadheads. If you have success with fixed blade, then shoot fixed blade. That's controversial as we need to get today on the show.
I think it's interesting that there's been a lot of talk with just how Bear has kind of come about it with the single cam bows, and that's not really like I just am sitting here thinking. I think the last single cam or solo cam bow I shot was a Bear bow, and ever since then, like there's been so much push for speed and like dual cams. Like that's all I've shot since then. But one of the best pieces of advice I got, and Ryan kind of said that before, is like if you go to a pro shop, you're a new archer, you're going to look to buy your first bow. One of the best things that you can do is just shoot a whole bunch of bows without worrying about the name that's attached to the bow, right? Like, because so many people want to like, this is what I heard. I heard this is the best, So like, I had a guy that he's up in northeastern Wisconsin, Lena Swamp Archery. His name's Wade, and he would put bows in your hand and never tell you the name of them. Just shoot it. Just just close your eyes, hold this. Now open them, shoot. And I think that was such a great way to do it. And now that I think about it, man, if you're a first-time hunter and you're shooting these aggressive dual cams and all of a sudden they put a solo cam in your hand, it's going to feel so much better. It's going to draw so smooth, and it's just going to feel amazing. I feel like so that's like a huge positive to the Bear Archery line.
And I think it's good for people to pick what they want, right? So I was just thinking, I was like, man, how many cams do I offer? I offer a lot. I would say there's 5 different kind of core cam systems, and then there's probably 3 variations on that. I mean, one is a solo cam, but we kind of say dual, but like we have like your Legend XR. It's a really awesome hybrid system that gives you tons of adjustment in it, but it still gets for that much adjustment for what that cam can perform. Speed and everything else on that bow is crazy good. So there's some, it's real, again, you nailed it. It's what you like. And then like on I think you said you were shooting the Persist as your primary bow.
Yep.
Well, that one you can even adjust the let off. So besides just adjusting your draw length and stuff, I mean, we were one of the first ones to come out where you can adjust it 75, 80, 85, and 90. So I mean, that's just one more step that, I mean, and that's debatable all day. What's your favorite let off? Like I like to have a very high let off at 90, and a lot of people don't. A lot of people like to be 80, 85. There's not really a wrong way. It's just a preference.
What are some of the differences?
What's the downfall to having a higher let off? Because like you hear that all the time, but I don't really know like what are you giving up?
Yeah,
is there anything that's
how do you articulate that?
I wouldn't say there's usually a lot of downfall. Usually where you adjust the let off is kind of based on your style of shooting. So which kind of goes back to even what we were just talking about with the releases. So not to get back into the release conversation, but I'm a big pull through shooter. So and what I mean by that is from the time I draw it back, I don't exactly when I'm anchoring, I start pretty close to starting to pull through, which so I like the let off because I'm not so worried about when you get a higher let off. Sometimes, depending on the bow and the cam system, it feels like maybe you have a higher valley, or your valley might, I shouldn't say higher, maybe a steeper valley, meaning, when it comes up and then you come through. So when I come through, I'm always got tension pulling back, right? Some people that relax then want to creep. And then if you creep on bows that have a higher let off, and of course I'm saying our cams are great. So even if you creep a little bit, it's not going to grab you. But if you creep too much, it wants to go, right? So you've got whatever a 90% let off bow. Once it gets over the valley, all of that is coming back into the bow to shoot the arrow, right?
Mm-hmm.
So some people don't like that because they're like, oh, it's always wanting to jump, or you hear people say jump, or it's wanting to go forward. Well, a lot of those, uh, in general terms, some of those shooters might be creeping forward a little bit. And where you get into that is like, I like to still bring up tree stand hunting. Sometimes when you tree stand hunt, you should be bending at your waist, but some people would move their arm forward. So, an easy way to get around that is if that does happen, then go to 80 like on the persist, our current flagship bow, you can adjust it to 80, and then it's not going to try to pull away from you as much if it does go over that. And that's just like one reason. I mean, you could get definitely more technical. I'm just kind of trying to keep it more general in hunting. But where I'm always pulling back, I'm always pulling back. So I would rather hold as lower amount of the bow as I can because I know I'm not creeping forward.
That was a very good explanation. It's hard because you're talking about something that is very visually dependent.
And you related that to hunting beautifully in the tree stand situation.
Well, and if you shoot these back to what you guys said it before I did, if you shoot them in the pro shop, you can try that and see which one you like. I mean, just that's the way I like it. Doesn't mean I can tell you we argue it at Bear all the time on what the best let off is. We all have our opinion.
Yeah, well, a lot of people do, and it's a very opinionated community, which is fine. One of the questions that came through Instagram on our stories or whatever was a gal, Elizabeth, said, "What's more important with a limited budget, arrow quality or broadhead quality?" Now, this is kind of getting a little bit away from the bows to the next component. I know you guys aren't in the arrow business, but I don't know if you have a POV on that question.
Yeah, we do sick broadhead, so we're in the broadhead business. So I don't want to say skimp on either. They're both important. So I think it just depends on how well you went. But being the bow guy, I tend to go towards arrows because the arrow and the bow go together, right? If you don't have a a, a bad or a good arrow in a bow, it definitely can affect things, so to say. But it just kind of depends too on, I mean, uh, the arrow, it just, what are we talking about when we're skimping on an arrow? You're talking about going like, instead of getting like a 0.003 straightness, you're going to do a 0.006 and only shoot 20 yards for whitetail, you're probably good with either, right? But if we're talking like an introductory arrow versus like an Easton FMJ that's top of the line carbon aluminum, then yes, you're going to definitely see some differences there because the weight changes and everything else. So not to get too technical there, they're both important. I would say that you would want to try to blend it, so you still have a quality broadhead and a quality arrow, but maybe if budget's a huge deal, maybe kind of take both of them down so they're about even. But that would just be my opinion. The arrows are very important, but if the broadhead's not good either, penetration is equally important.
And none of these questions have been prepped, so like your ability to answer these on the fly, you're just taking them and you're going, and it's really great. So thank you. If you want to take a drink of water or
I worked in retail for a long time.
Yeah, that's right. You did mention that. So no, I think they're good questions. I don't know if you might have a hard no or yes on this, and this could be part of what might come next when we get you back on here, based on what's coming on the pike. But someone asked, does Bear plan to make a carbon bow? And you might be like, no, we don't, or no, maybe.
Oh, I would say we don't rule out anything. I wouldn't say that we are or aren't, but we are always wanting to give our customer what they want. So if the market tends to head that way, then we would explore more of that. I mean, we are always trying to move archery forward.
Do you have an opinion on carbon bows? Like, they're very light. So I use carbon as an analogy in marketing. Let me explain.
Let's hear it. Let's hear it.
And then,
am I going to need a whiskey for this?
No. Well, maybe I'll have one. But the analogy will ring true because I want to hear your response to this. So the analogy I use is, maybe it was a year or two ago now because TikTok has changed, but I compared Facebook ads or Meta ads to wood and TikTok ads to carbon, because wood is, you can see it failing over time. It's tried and true. It'll just kind of do its thing for a long time. They build roller coasters out of wood, in some parts of the world, and they last for a very long time because you see it failing. That being said, TikTok at the time was more like carbon.
Crazy.
It would just work so good until it didn't, and you had no warning sign. It just snapped and broke, and you couldn't figure out what the hell happened. So to that end, carbon, given my analogy of how things can bend and break, freaks me out a little bit.
So now you want Ryan to say, yeah, we're working on a carbon boat. It's going to be great.
I don't know.
Teed you up for that one.
Yeah. Well, I don't know that I'd agree with the analogy when it comes to bows on that. I do believe you can make I mean, we don't currently make a carbon bow, so it's not like I'm super in depth on that. But I do believe that, the people that do or have probably vented out that they're, the safety and stuff like that on the longevity of them. Because there has been carbon bows in the market for a while. They're definitely hot right now, but it's not like they haven't been around for a while. But what I will say is that when you started down the marketing analogy, I was going to say you're probably 100% right, because what I would say is people hear the word carbon and your mind goes to light, right? Light.
Yeah.
And I would say look up the weights of the carbon bows on the market and compare them to the non-carbon bows on the market and see that they're not
pretty close.
Not what you're thinking.
Is that because by the time you get the cams and the accessories and everything else on there, it's like
how much? Well, I think some of that matters, but I would say even just look at the bow onlys, or again, go to your pro shops, shoot them compared to other bows and stuff like that. Try out, see what you want. But then I would also say, so then see how it feels, right? Because I would say, I think some of that where, that we build the bows to work. We all build bows that we are thinking are going to be, safe and work well, right? So if that means it's got to weigh a certain amount to do that, then that's probably why it weighs that certain amount. So, I would say that's important, but I would also say balance is as equally. I would say balance is more important than weight. So, if you want, in my opinion, that's why you should shoot them. I would also say, why do I say things like that, right? So, of course, we are definitely a hunting company. I've said that a few times, but watch some of the ASAs and stuff like that. You think those bows that those guys are shooting and are crazy accurate with have extra weights put on them on the stabilizers and behind, and some on the top with different cheater bars and stuff like that. So the most accurate shooters in the world aren't making their bows light. They're making them heavy, right? Or heavier. Again, I would say what they're doing is balancing their bow. So I believe the most important thing you can have is a balanced bow for you. And so whether that's super light or not, as you hunt and or train for your hunt, you get your off bow arm used to that weight, and then you get your balance right. I would say that's more important than just having a light bow. And again, I would say too, since you asked the question, I think it's important to know those specs and look and see, at the bow that you're looking at, if it's carbon, is it actually lighter than another bow that would be aluminum?
Just a question for your personal setup for maybe hunting. I know you probably have multiple, being an employee of a great archery company, but do you use like a back bar to balance your bows for hunting? Is that something that you regularly do?
It is. So I go back and forth kind of. So, back in the day, I didn't used to use that at times. So I find myself at times going like, God, what did I use 10 years ago? I like that so much. And I probably just don't remember it accurately. But I do. So I like to have an offset. So I tend to run an 8 to 10 inch stabilizer out front, and then maybe a 6 to 8 out the back, and then I tend to angle it off the back a little bit, and I'm using Trophy Ridge stuff, and then I do adjust the weight to where it balanced, and that's what I'm looking for is a smooth balance as I'm drawing the bow back, that I feel like it just balances in my offhand extremely well on the draw. And a lot of times I now hunt a lot more out of ground blinds than I used to. So looking for something that, I think kind of balances well when I'm even. Um, so that's how my personal setup, but yeah, you're right. I do change it quite a bit at times, but that's kind of what I'm running right now.
I was just curious, and I'm glad you mentioned the ground blind thing because most guys, when you're shooting, you're doing your reps, most people are shooting on flat ground, and the back bar to get things stabilized kind of makes sense then. But as soon as you're like swinging in a saddle or in a tree stand and you're at severe angles taking 5-6 yard shots, I'm like, man, it just hasn't sold me yet that I need that. So like I've never shot the back bar. I don't add it
behind you.
But I was just curious, what do you want it to do?
If you're watching on video, and if you're not, now's a good time to check out our YouTube or Spotify, and you can see the video, or even Carbon TV. But that buck by Derek, I shot that deer with my bow cocked to the side.
Oh,
I felt like a gangster because it's just how I was in my saddle. No, I was in a stand. That was a forced saddle. That was the year before I got in a saddle. I was in a stand in a very gnarly, weird tree. And I was at full draw. I was like, oh my gosh, this branch is right here. If I let go, my limb is going to hit the branch. So I tilted my compound bow and let it rip. The shot wasn't great. The buck died. It's fine. But don't recommend, but that's what had to happen in that moment. I was like, it's now or never. It's like
much more popular with the traditional folks than the compound folks.
Yeah. Yeah, watching some of those trad guys shoot at Foam Fest, like they really do kind of cant that.
It's all about getting your eye over the top of the arrow.
Okay.
So you can, and that's what you saw Gus was up in the tree stand shooting, and all of a sudden he's angling the bow. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, buddy, you're canting the bow. You're shooting just like Fred Bear. And he's like, really?
I think you got a picture of that.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, it's exciting stuff. So you had, we'll do no calls. I'm shocked, listeners, that no one's called. Lots of good comments. So we'll take what we can get. It's good to see that. I'm just surprised, but it tends to be like, well, if you did it on this day at this time, I'd call in. We'll see. But Ryan, when I asked in the booking form, what was your okayest when went hunting, you didn't give me any detail, which I'm glad. I'm curious to hear about whatever happened in the river bottom in Nebraska during early rut. So do you have details to the story that you feel like elaborating on for our audience?
It's funny you asked that. When we were getting ready for this today and I saw the appointment and I saw what I wrote on there, I was like, man, I've had a lot of hunts in there. And I was trying to think, when you said okayest, I was like, okay, what's like one that happened that I was like, well, it was, it was okay, but good. So here's my okayest. So I got into, it was my first time on a new hunting property. Actually, we had put stands and stuff like it, but it was the first time with the group of guys that I was able to hunt it. And I was up in a tree stand, and we were getting pretty close around. It was in Nebraska. And so it was on a river bottom, and you get just tons of movement at times like that. And it was a good, so right first off in the morning, there was a really big whitetail that came by that just didn't give me a shot, but was great. Like right away, you're like, oh my God, this spot is great. I can't believe I'm not out here all the time. And then, the day kind of went on. So now I'm really only holding out for something a little bit bigger now. And so another okay buck walked by, and I was like, no, I'm not going to shoot that. And then another one came by, and I'm like, well, I'm not going to shoot that later. And then life happens, and I have 3 kiddos. I think at that point I just had 2. And I remember my wife calling, and this was so long ago. This was like back when I had like a single piece Nokia phone that didn't even have, like, you couldn't even play games.
No slides, no flips.
No slide.
ABC texting.
Yeah, you're just sitting up there alone, like none of the stuff we have now. And anyway, I remember her calling, and she wasn't loving how long I've been out there, which hadn't been that long. But I'm on the phone, and I look over my shoulder, and there's I would say an okay whitetail buck coming up, not near as big. At this point in Nebraska too, you could shoot 2 bucks, which you still can in a lot of places. 2 bucks a season, and I had 2 archery tags. So, and I hadn't shot anything yet. So he was an okay buck, and I was like, okay. So I hung up with her, and she was definitely wanting me to get home. So I remember thinking, it was like, I'm gonna shoot this deer if this works out. And yep, he came right in.
Wife, the ultimate
Like
motivator.
I literally put the phone down like on the seat and turned around, and I was like, yeah, I just got one. I'll be home in a little while. And
That's incredible.
and I think it was a super fun hunt, but now I'm like, that was an okay hunt.
That's good. That's good. That's a great story.
That's where like your first expectation, you see the big one in the morning, and you're like, oh, today's gonna be
We're on it
unbelievable.
now,
And you're
yeah.
gonna call from the wife, and you're like, shit, I better wrap this up quick.
Yep. And I went back multiple times to try to get that big one too. But yeah, that hunt yep, worked out good.
That's a good
It
one.
probably took me longer to get home after shooting the deer than if I had just left, but we won't tell her that detail.
That's a good story. I can't tell you any time. So the few deer that I've shot with my bow, because I don't know, I really haven't actually been at it that long, and hunting's hard, as we all know, with a bow, especially on public land in a densely populated area right between Milwaukee and Madison, Wisconsin. But both times I call my wife and I was like, I got one, and she's like, no way, no, you didn't. Did you really? I'm like, yeah, I did. She's like, well, let me see it. I'm like, it's right here. She's like, you shot that one? I was like, who else shot it? She's just like 8 questions of disbelief that I got to like get through first.
Pan around. There's no like highway.
Yeah, it was
next
totally
to
me.
you. It's not a
like,
roadkill.
Jeez, #1 supporter, biggest fan.
Our biggest fans are our biggest critics. Also.
Yeah. But she's like, wow, I can't believe it. Wow, you got one. Okay, so you're coming home and you're done now for the season. Yeah. So.
My wife at this point knows that if she's getting a call from me and it's still somewhat light-ish, might as well just start rounding the troops and jumping in the car, because I'm like, there's enough light. Get them out here. Get the kids out here. We can blood trail it. Come on. Hurry. Get everybody
You've
out.
done this. I remember when we talked to you years ago when we were still rebranded. You were on the show, and I was like, you had your kids come out to a cattail march? And you're like, hindsight was probably not a great idea.
We cut holes in the bottom of a backpack, put my daughter in it, so her legs were sticking out of the backpack. Poor little Penny was probably like 2 years old. Hiked her out of there, and then once we got the kids out there, and then I had that buck, and I was like, well, how am I going to carry my son in this backpack and drag this buck, which weighs more than me? Let's figure it out.
You probably weren't in a really easily accessible area either.
It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great. But we got it done. It was a memory, core memory.
That is a core memory, 100%.
I don't know if it was good or bad.
One of my bigger deers I'd ever shot. Like by the time I got back to town, it'd already been rumored that I had shot it. It wasn't that big, but small towns, sometimes that's how it goes. Anyway, I pull up to literally the preschool that my oldest son was going to at times. To show him, and the teacher came out right away, and she's like, I'm gonna bring the whole class out here to look at this. You guys are you good with that? I'm like, absolutely. That's
like, gross, look at that, its tongue's hanging out.
Okay, I dare you.
Can I touch it? Yeah. I got blood on my hands.
Oh,
did we get any of those quotes right? We might have.
There might have been some of that. I remember just being so happy that the whole class was out there. It was a way to get kids involved in hunting in a way.
Well, I mean, I'm sure your son felt like a rock star, because Dad just pulled up with a big old buck, and the whole class got to go out and do something out of the ordinary. Like, that was a moment for him that he's just, my dad. You were on you're on the pedestal now, Dad. Well done.
My dad can beat your dad up. Yeah, Mike can shoot big bucks. Prove it.
Get to lunchtime. He'll be rolling any minute. Come on, Dad.
Oh, it's cool. Ryan, thanks for hanging out with us here on the Okayest Hunter podcast. If you want to kind of tease anything on the horizon and anything that we can do to help support that and bring you back on, I think that'd be a great way to bring the plane in for a landing.
Yeah, without a doubt. So we kind of talked about before. So this is a time of year where outdoor companies come out with new products, and we're not any different than that. So we are getting very close to releasing all our new products at Bear and Trophy Ridge coming up in the next few weeks. So, and I can tell you on the bow side, which is the side I manage, it's as exciting as it's ever could be. Like I'm a little worried. I'm like, am I going to oversell this? I don't think so.
No, that's good. You don't think that's good. And you've been, sorry, say again, how long have you been at the company?
6 years.
6 years. So would you say this is one of the bigger things that's happened in your time at the company?
From the number of bows it is, so this would be the most new that we've came out with in a single launch. So that part, and then I would say too, which I feel is our timing is really good, is I for sure with the value part of it too. So kind of started off really early with this. So as you know, Fred Bear was huge. That value was a kind of a key core that that we make sure that we're allowing the everyday hunter to be able to experience archery, right? I mean, that's why we kind of keep our price points where they are, and we've worked diligently to do that. I would say it's not super easy at times, and I think this year's line more than ever is that way, and I feel like that's great because see how the economy is, interest rates. It's just everything costs more to buy eggs than it did like 6 months ago, right? So we're trying to make sure that we're keeping all of that in mind and coming out with great new bows that even offer more value.
I mean, that's one of the reasons like there's other bow brands we could have partnered with and we didn't. We wanted to partner with Bear because you guys, your mission and how you operate and how you hold true to that aligns tightly with ours. And that's really important for us if we're going to be authentic. Words are coming out before they're ready to come out. And then
we're excited.
It's a big deal for us. So we're honored to have you as our guest, and you're super knowledgeable.
And before you wrap it up, you look at the wall of bows behind Ryan. If you've ever seen the Bear ready to hunt bows, not that many companies truly sell ready to hunt packages anymore. Like it's mostly like flagship, spend $2,000, please. You look at Bear's ready to hunt bows, and they are set up for a person who's never hunted before, or who has, and just wants a good setup for the whitetail woods. Here's a 3-pin sight and a whisker biscuit. Your arrow will never fall off. If you want to upgrade it, when you're ready, go ahead. But they're set up for people to start hunting. And you've said it multiple times, and I think that's my favorite part is you're a hunting company that makes bows, not like a bow company that's trying to sell and just you're trying to get people in the woods to hunt in the best way possible. And I think the entire community appreciates that. So thank you.
Well said.
Appreciate that.
Thank you, man. Look at you go.
This is why I've always been a fan.
By myself.
I'm a fan.
Yeah, same. Yeah, same. My first bow that I killed a deer with. So my first bow was a Dart and Viper that my dad handed down to me. Then my second bow is a Bear Empire solo cam, and that's the first buck I got was with that bow, and the first doe I got was with that bow. And then I think I've shot at does. I should have killed them, probably killed them, but I never. Who knows? You can see those stories on the internet. I'm on that path right now. I'm relive that. But I think I got this guy with that bow also. So both bucks.
I had a youth. It was a Browning Micro Midas, which was little one. Went up to 40 pounds. Killed my first deer with that, and then I upgraded to the Fred Bear Epic Extreme, which was an awesome bow that I killed a lot of deer with. And that one I actually gave to my cousin because I didn't want to sell it because I liked it so much. So I gave it to my cousin because he was just getting into archery. So I think he's still shooting it, which is pretty cool.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
You guys, I don't know how I feel right now about my age, but I can't tell you how many Epic Extremes I sold at Cabela's retail locations when I was just starting, and Micro Minuses. Those are great bows.
Yep.
Yeah.
I've set those bows up and bow teched on them even back in the day. But yeah.
Tony
really
Cordell,
good bows.
Coming in with the last comment for the show and the last word likely. The Bear attitude worked great for me.
That's because Tony has a great attitude.
Was that? I'm assuming that was a model.
No, it was a model. Yep.
Yeah, but he also has a great attitude.
Yes.
His bow and is literally and figuratively.
Yeah, you guys have good plays on words, like the legend, the legit, the
The Empire was probably close to the Epic Extreme. They had the E series.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's funny you bring that up. For lately, we've had a lot of bows with P's in them, and I'm like, we need to get off this. Yep, it does. It happens. It's not always on purpose, but
once you get running down a track, it's hard to jump off.
Fall on the blood trail. Just keep following the blood trail, okay? This is where it's going to take us. Maybe there's a deer at the end of this one.
Naming product isn't quite as easy as people think, or at least my opinion.
It's certainly not. And you got this thing is already taken. There's a legal thing here. There's a that here. Oh, that's confusing. Yeah. Boy, if you've ever tracked a blood trail to someone else's gut pile, you might be an Okayest hunter. For the record.
Well said. Well said.
Yeah.
All right, Ryan, we're going to end the live broadcast. Hang out with us for a minute here. We'll debrief. And thanks again for tuning in.
Have a good night.
See you.